You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WYPC.
WCYTV
Here on the Daily Signal.
Boy, oh boy, is the left excited, elated, ready to rock and roll. And why? Because they have finally found a superhero. I am beyond amazed that after all this time, after that lonely bench where all you had was Kamala Harris and Joe Biden lasagna, who we'll be getting to later, who's emerged from his coffin, to deliver an important address on Social Security, something that his grandchildren are taking in at this point. It's amazing to watch the left finally, unite around something important that the whole country can enjoy, and that is Maryland Man. Now, Maryland Man is a fictitious individual from the far-off country of El Salvador. See, that's what makes him Maryland Man, because nothing says Maryland like Kilmar Abrego Garcia, the illegal immigrant from El Salvador, and a two-time judged member of the MS-13, the Central American gang, who traffics everything from guns to children. So why do I say the Democrats have chosen him as their hero? Well, honestly, it's amazing to see them actually praising a U.S. state at all. Well, of course, they're not. They're praising this illegal immigrant who was deported from that state. And they're very, very angry. Or they're outraged in unison, finally, because President Trump and his administration followed the Supreme Court ruling that said that if, this guy gets out of the El Salvador prison, then the United States would have to facilitate a trial, a judicial hearing. That's it. And it doesn't have to be in the United States. Nowhere in this 9-0 decision does it say they got to bring him back to the United States. Nope. Despite all of the headlines, we talked about that last episode. But now we've got to get to the posturing, because it's not enough for Democrats just to get out there and say, we do this, we say this. A long-running theory on my show is that the biggest issue, without a doubt, that the left has is taking issues way too far, way too fast. They can't just settle with saying, I think that, gay people should be allowed to, do whatever it is that they want. Oh, hey, I think that, that they should be allowed to spend their lives ago. They have to keep going and going and going and going way too far, way too fast until it's, hey, kids need to be able to cut off their genitals if they want, and parents should lose custody if they disagree, as bills in California and now Colorado have made it clear. So this is yet another example. It's more than just saying, look, the Trump administration made a mistake on this guy's deportation. They could have deported him anywhere except El Salvador and, et cetera, whatever. But we think that they should bring him back and deport him somewhere else. That would be a rebuke to the Trump administration that one might say is justified. Did they do that? No. Now it's this Maryland man, this Maryland hero. They've got to visit him in El Salvador. So Senator Chris Van Hollen of Maryland is now yelling that he's going to go down to El Salvador and, I don't know, set things straight or whatever.
I saw the comments of President Bukele, and I look forward to meeting with him. I've requested to meet with him. I reached out to the ambassador here to ask to meet while he's here. But I've also made clear if we can't meet here, I do intend to go to El Salvador to discuss the release of this individual who is illegally detained. A Maryland man who's the father of 3 in a notorious prison in El Salvador. And I believe the president of El Salvador will recognize why it's important to allow him to return to the United States of America, because it is absolutely unjust and illegal to have this Marylander detained one more day in a notorious prison in El Salvador. Of course, President Trump could have just said, bring him home. Of course he could have done that.
Bring him home? Bring him home? His home ain't here. He's not a citizen of the United States. He didn't have legal residency in the United States, a Marylander. You know who that's an insult to? People from Maryland, and that's a low bar, my man. That's where the Naval Academy is. Gross. I got to be honest with you guys. That Maryland is not exactly a high bar out there as one from the Midwest who looks down on such East Coast states. In all seriousness, though, They can't just say, look, we stand with all individuals and their families for receiving their just due process, whatever that may be, even if it's just a judicial hearing. He can't do it. They can't do that. They can't sound sane. Here's Adam Schiff, good old Shifty Schiff, the pencil neck extraordinaire, who has decided that this is a constitutional crisis with Maryland man.
The constitutional crisis is here. And we saw it take place inside the Oval Office in a meeting between Donald Trump and the president of El Salvador. Here's the president of El Salvador saying that he will not return a man named Kilmar Abrego Garcia, wrongfully sent out of the United States in violation of a court order.
So I will pause away for just a quick second here to point out that Schiff is trying this new, I'm a family man just like everybody else, and he's got on his nice like Kohl's sweater quarter zip, which, by the way, I mean, I hear you. Wear a quarter zip, but you can see over his left shoulder, the tag is still on it in the back. And it's that little clear line right over on the left shoulder to us. Yeah, that's the tag. It's not taken off of the sweater. He goes on, by the way, talking about how Stephen Miller is a really bad guy and
return. But it's unclear what the district court meant about effectuate. And the Supreme Court says we're sending it back to the district court to decide how to effectuate this, given that the court can't trample the administration's power over foreign policy. Now, in that Supreme Court opinion, Justice Sotomayor, writing for others in a concurring opinion, pointed out that the logic of the government's position is that they can send anyone out of the country to a maximum security prison, including American citizens, and claim they have no power to rectify the situation.
That's not what they wrote. That's not what she wrote. That is a bold-faced lie. She didn't say, oh, well, the president can send anyone anywhere. No, the president can remove any person who is not a citizen of this country or a legal visa holder before the State Department revokes their visa. Just making things up in support of Maryland man is not going to get them any favors. Massachusetts 4th Representative Jake Auchincloss, Osh Bagosh says, habeas corpus is the cornerstone of Americans' freedom. I hate it when people use Latin legal terminology to say it's the cornerstone of American freedom. Panem et circenses, veni vidi vici, pasta linguine. It's the cornerstone of Americans' freedom. Stop it. If Trump will not return him, the judiciary should send the U.S. Marshals to go and get him. What? No. Who's going to go down there and get him, Tex? You? This town ain't big enough for two of us. Excellent. Fantastic. Now, this is news from Axios. Cory Booker, the guy who yelled and didn't poop for 24 hours on the floor of the Senate. He's in the process of planning a trip to El Salvador with other Democrats. Yeah, get the whole gang on down there. You've seen AOC crying in a parking lot in America. Now get ready for Cory Booker crying in a parking lot in El Salvador. Amazing. Marvel couldn't have written a better plot line. Beautiful. A bunch of Democrats also eyeing a trip to the country and also down to Maryland. I love that they're also framing this story as you've got Democrats who are willing to go to El Salvador. You've got another group of Democrats who are willing to go to this guy's county in Maryland. Beautiful. Yes. I love how they have to frame going to Maryland as a trip for Democrats. A half an hour drive. What a marvelous time. The media's losing it too, by the way. CNN's... Now, hold on. I should point out, Carolyn Levitt, while all of the media accounts have spent, according to the Media Research Center, 64 minutes and 57 seconds on the Maryland man coverage, have spent 0 minutes actually covering a Maryland mother's killer on trial, an illegal immigrant who killed this individual. So, talk about, platforms and concern over American citizens. Carolyn Levitt, of course, points this out. If you're on the radio, we'll have to catch you in a second for it. This will be for the live stream crew. This is the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal. All right, let's see what Levitt had to say to all this.
Office for releasing that information that you cited up there regarding the ICE arrests over the last couple of days. And I have them right here, but what I might ask is, why not release the same information for those who were deported to El Salvador?
Well, first of all, the information was released by the Department of Homeland Security. The individuals on the flights to El Salvador are foreign terrorists, and those are counterterrorism operations. They are much different than the arrests and final order of removals that you see on a day-to-day basis that law enforcement agents are conducting around the country.
That information was not, to that detail, was not released by DHS, though.
I just told you the reason. It was a counterterrorism operation, a deportation of foreign terrorists, not illegal criminals who have been convicted of heinous crimes living in our American communities. Two different things. Foreign terrorist, illegal immigrant criminal, two different things, two different definitions. You should look them up.
So the media is now starting to try to suggest that Trump is trying to like secretly disappear people because the U.S. isn't sharing counterterrorism operation details with reporters. Which, by the way, I thought that was a good thing. When Jeffrey Goldberg found out about a counterterrorism operation 2 hours before, that was an incredible breach. But now everyone wants all of like the super hot secret details. Curious how that stuff always happens to play out. Now, where is this going? And this is the real question. So, according to the New York Post, a Maryland federal judge, this would be Judge Zinnes, who ordered the Trump administration to return Garcia, ruled that she would not hold any government officials in contempt for violating her order, for now, is according to the New York Post, but warned against further gamesmanship. And here's that quote. She says, "We have to give process to both sides, but we are going to move," U.S. District Judge Paula Zinnes said at a hearing in her Greenbelt, Maryland courtroom Tuesday afternoon. "There will be no tolerance for gamesmanship or grandstanding." So the idea is that the Trump administration's not, allowed to talk about this in public? How are you as a district court judge going to levy any kind of injunctions or stays against the Trump administration in fiat as some district judge in Maryland? SCOTUS has already ruled against that. I don't know what you think that you've got here. Oh, I'm going to allow them to continue on as presently planned. Yeah, because the Supreme Court said you gotta. All right. I mean, she's kind of in limbo because there's not really a place for this court case to go. He doesn't have the legal right to this country. And El Salvador, if a citizen of El Salvador is held under charges of capital crimes, which he has been all the way back to the aughts, by the El Salvador government, the U.S. doesn't have a say. You can say, yeah, but it was a mistake that the U.S. sent him to El Salvador. Sure, that can be true. I'm going to put it this way. If there is a guy who has committed murder in the United States, and then he goes to France, and there the French government, meaning to send him on a flight to Brazil, accidentally sends him on a flight to New York City. And once he lands in New York City, U.S. officials capture and imprison him, a citizen of the United States who committed murder here. Yeah, the French government doesn't really have a choice in the matter. He's a citizen of El Salvador. Yeah, but he wanted migrant status. He didn't do that at a port of entry. He illegally entered into the country, and then once he got caught, then it was, oh, I fear for my life back in El Salvador, which is what everyone says who illegally migrates to the country. We told you this when it was happening under the Biden administration. We told you, if everyone can claim that they are under super duper fear of retaliation in their home country, and everyone gets automatic migrant status, then later on, when someone actually needs to claim asylum in the United States, it's meaningless. But the left couldn't do it. They couldn't. They had to go too far, too fast. Now here they are with Maryland Man. And there's also, this is something that I do particularly enjoy. Apparently, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, if he does show back up at the United States, is going to be taken into custody of the Department of Homeland Security and just deported somewhere else. Fantastic. We're going to go pick up the radio crew and talk a little bit about Harvard University. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on The Daily Signal.
It's the Tony Kinnett cast on 93 WIBC.
Harvard University. Harvard University. A magical place where individuals of great status and wealth and education, like David Hogg, who misspelled things on his own application to Harvard with his low SAT scores. Harvard, I jest. What nonsense. The Harvard University crew, after the Trump administration sent a letter saying we have some requests of Harvard if they want to keep receiving federal dollars, the president's office, and you say, wait a minute, who is the president of Harvard University? Isn't it that Claudine lady, that Claudine Gay lady? No. That's not her. No, she was canned from Harvard, or excuse me, she was canned from the presidency of Harvard after she plagiarized her entire academic work. But anyway, new president Alan Garber, he released a statement in which he said, quote, "No government, regardless of which party is in power, should dictate what private universities can teach, whom they can admit and hire, and which areas of study and inquiry they can pursue." President Alan Garber. So let's talk a little bit about this. First of all, Harvard University is not a private college. It's not. Harvard University is a public institution on the basis of it's taking federal dollars. Private institutions in the United States at the secondary level are really far and few in between. Even the small Christian institution, of which was my first college, is not a 100% private university, Maranatha Baptist University in Wisconsin. Highly recommend it, because they do, in some forms, in some small ways, take federal dollars. There are a few colleges in this country that don't take any federal money whatsoever. One of those is Hillsdale College. The federal government, no matter how hard it kicks or screams or cries from its Department of Education, cannot tell Hillsdale College what to do, because Hillsdale don't take no money from the Fed. Now, what about Harvard? Well, Harvard takes lots of federal money from the Fed. They take anywhere between $2 and $7 billion per year, and they're resting on an over $60 billion federal endowment. So, yeah, they take a lot of your tax dollars. It's tax day after all. We paid state and federal taxes, and a chunk of your federal tax dollars that you have been paying out of your paycheck, that you have been paying out of sales taxes, that you have been paying out of certain exchange rates, that you've been paying out of your income, has been funneled away in part to Harvard University. And by the way, it was not just Harvard itself freaking out. Barack Obama, alumnus of Harvard University, said, "Harvard is set an example for other higher ed institutions, rejecting an unlawful and ham-handed attempt to stifle academic freedom, while taking concrete steps to make sure all students at Harvard can benefit from an environment of intellectual inquiry, rigorous debate, and mutual respect. Let's hope other institutions follow suit." And all of those words are completely meaningless. In the true Harvard fashion, you see letters from presidents, former presidents, and presidents of the institution, which take 18 pages to say absolutely nothing. Because what Obama is saying here is Harvard did good. They rejected something from the administration trying to stifle freedom. They are taking steps to make sure all students at Harvard can get something good. Now, what are those things that Harvard is suggesting the administration is ordering that is preventing the doing good for all students? Well, the Harvard president actually links the letter from the Departments of Health and Human Services, the Department of Education, and says this is what the United States government expects of any public institution, but especially Harvard, given their history of, violating civil rights laws. Because again, Harvard was found in a lawsuit to be liable and to have committed, or to be liable for the damages of, and to have committed the crimes of racial discrimination in admissions processes. So if you were Asian and you applied to Harvard University, Harvard would dock your admission chances and basically put a negative modifier on your SAT scores. So you had to have a higher SAT score as an Asian student to get in. And then if you were a black student and you applied, they gave you like a cursory kind of false boost to your SAT score to get in, with the goal of getting less Asian students, less Jewish students, or should be fewer Asian students, fewer white students into the university, and then more students of whom they considered the BIPOC community, which makes no sense because I was told that people of color used to include Asian and Jewish and Italian people, but, that changes when certain members of the group get really upset. And by the way, what did the Trump administration ask them to do in this letter? Well, merit-based hiring. You need to hire people for positions based on what they can do, not based on their color. Seems pretty fair. I'd suggest, that whole Martin Luther King Jr. thing. All right. Merit-based admissions reform. So they have to start allowing people into Harvard based on what they can do, not what color they are. Also, viewpoint diversity in admissions are hiring, so they can't have a kid go, I'm a Republican, and automatically get his application denied. We saw this in Kyle Kashuv and David Hogg. Kyle Kashuv and David Hogg are both individuals who were survivors of the Parkland shooting in Florida. Kyle Kashuv had his admissions deleted because he was canceled for a gross couple of messages in a Google document years ago, and because he was a conservative. And then David Hogg, who said a lot of equally gross things, got in because he's a lib. So, that's fair. And then also suggesting you can't harbor individuals who basically violate the Clery Act, who violate crimes that are hate crimes, for example, the civil rights regarding anti-Semitism. So if you have someone on campus who's shouting, we'd like to kill all of the Jews, you can't just say, hey, that's just freedom of expression. Because under the Civil Rights Act, no, you can't go out there and say, I want to kill all the white people. I want to kill all the black people. I want to do this amount of harm to this ethnic group. That is racial discrimination policy, especially when you are hired by the university and federal dollars, your dollars, are being pumped into it. And Harvard is still doing this, by the way. Chris Rufo, friend of the show and a mentor of yours truly, posted today that Harvard has hosted and is currently planning racially segregated graduation ceremonies for every group except for white people and Jewish people in violation of the Civil Rights Act. Because now Trump, as is it in his administration, is withholding the annual $2.2 billion in federal funding to Harvard. Good. It's just going to get fancier from here. But again, the left desperate to go way too far and saying, yeah, well, we're just going to violate racial discrimination laws anyway. All right. Well, then, as Hillsdale College posted, then you can learn the joys of operating without any federal oversight because you don't take any federal money. Certainly the graduates of Harvard University can work together to make sure the university's not terrible. Well, not the Jewish ones. Don't want any of those Jews or Asians contributing money. Disgusting discrimination. President Biden got in front of the whole gang this evening and said a few words about Social Security. So that was right before the show. Producer Nick and I were enjoying, I think producer Daniel as well, the whole Biden in front of this group up in Chicago. I don't know why every former Democrat president has to live in Chicago for a year. Has anyone else noticed that? Maybe that's because Chicago was so good at preserving dead Democrats. But anywho, Joe Biden gets up in front of the crowd this evening, and he's not doing well, folks. He starts speaking, like they bring him up there, and they've got some intro music. And the only way I can describe this is in Iron Man 2, when Hammer gets out on stage and he's like dancing because, there's intro music and he's excited and he's like, hey, but Biden doesn't do that because Biden's dead. And so he starts mumbling through the intro music. Here you go.
Thank you. Who deserve help and paid for.
What was that? You want me to play what? Oh, there's nothing in my pants. Do a dance. My friend Lance.
Amazing. Radio crew will catch you in just a second. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast. He did not stop there. No. It took him a whopping 32 seconds. I timed it before he started mumbling absolute incoherent gibberish. That would be 32 seconds after the music stopped. So in reality, probably a minute and a half into his speech.
And I'd never seen hardly any black people in Scranton at the time and I was only going in 4th grade.
Okay. Whenever someone is describing black people and they start off with, I had never seen any what, have you never seen any of, Joe? You've never seen any, or were you about to use the term colored children? People don't say that anymore, Joe. But he caught himself. And then I want to play this line over again. Did he say he only went in 4th grade?
Hardly any black people in Scranton at the time and I was only going in 4th grade. And I remember seeing the kids going by at the time called colored kids on a bus going by.
And there it is. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Joe. That man, for a month after the November elections, was still at the top of the list of future Democratic contenders. What a magical time to be in American politics. What a truly magical time. We do have a clip of Representative Laura Friedman of California meeting with attorney generals, just like openly talking about scheming against the Trump administration. And by scheming against the Trump administration, I mean just saying, hey, we're just gonna try to find things to arrest him on. We're gonna get him.
Every single week, we have a litigation working group where a large group of us, and I'm talking there's maybe 75 members of the House, sit down every single week with the AGs to talk about legal strategy.
Does that make you guys feel great, by the way? Knowing that you pay these people's salaries, their taxes, through your taxes that you paid today. And gee golly whiz, what love found amazing joy. You have the privilege of paying for them to sit down, 75 of them, and just do a little brainstorming sesh about how they're going to do what? What's their legal strategy here?
This is all going on every single week behind the scenes. It is nonstop talk, nonstop introduction of bills and legislation, nonstop being on social media as much as we can without being throttled and without the crazy analytics and doing all these things.
What are those things to do? Oh, to just target Trump. Now, I do think it's funny that she says all of that nonsense, all of that mess about how apparently we need to really go after, and we're just out here introducing bills and legislation. Guys, there are government trackers where you can see bills and legislation introduced. The Democrats are not just introducing bills and legislation all the time. We have a tracker that shows it. So I don't know what legislation she's talking about. I really don't. I'm looking for it. I just can't see whatever it is that they are promising. And it's just not getting any better. Up next, we have what might be one of my favorite segments that we have ever been able to do. This happened over the weekend, but I cannot help covering this one in way too much detail. We're going to talk about the Astrothoughts and the brave Hollywood women in space. It's going to be amazing. Don't miss it. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal.
We're going on a trip in our favorite rocket ship.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Get ready to explore. There's so much to find. Little Einstein. We're going on.
I just want you guys to know that that was in fact producer Nick who demanded that be the bumper track. We had to get that made right before the show. Allison, I've been told by reliable sources that you're a woman. First of all, were you inspired by Katy Perry and other assorted celebrity women and their trip to the outer space?
Well, if 6 girls in matching blue astronaut suits doesn't do it, I don't know what will.
I think that's fair. You, I think before the show we were talking, you said Space Mountain? Their trip to Space Mountain.
Yeah, listen, I don't fault these women because I'm sure they got a free trip to
I would take a
space,
free trip
and
to space.
I would take it too.
Even if it was with
However,
Katy Perry.
Exactly. But however, the idea of, 6 celebrities taking a Space Mountain trip 10 minutes up and 10 minutes down is baffling to me. Why we did it. I think there's a lot more other deserving women if you want to go that route.
I mean, Krista McAuliffe,
crazy.
Sally Ride. I mean, there are a lot of people that as a again, not to get all former science teacher here on you, but just to be fair, there are a lot of fantastic astronauts who actually drove the ship. And so I'm going to give you guys a few stats here about the Astrothoughts that I figured you would particularly enjoy. So the company that sent them up is called Blue Origin. It was a fully autonomous capsule, which means it was entirely controlled by the ground crew, and it was just an automated little flight up and then right back down. So as to the first female astronaut crew, no one steered anything at all, which, of course, is why they didn't hit any curbs coming back down. So I'm sorry. The capsule was named the Kármán Line. Well, that's a weird name for an aircraft. Why is it called the Kármán Line? Well, it's for the minimum distance needed to be considered in space. So they reached 106 kilometers in the air. Basically got just just a couple of kilometers here. Was it a couple of kilometers or a couple of meters of the line? Was it meters or kilometers? So they got 6 kilometers above this Kármán Line, which is the official space starts here, city limits kind of a thing. They sat there for a few seconds and then they came back down. So I want to make this, and the reason that this matters as this huge event that's so amazing, incredible. Oh man, I can't believe this is just wonderful for women everywhere. How insulting to suggest that the first fully female crewed space flight, all they got out of it was they got up to space, they hovered essentially for a few minutes, and then they came right back down to Earth. None of them steered, none of them did anything except take pictures. Oh, and I shouldn't be, I really shouldn't be, rude or exclusive here. They also said things like, "Oh my goddess," when they saw the moon.
1, 2, 3, taking up space! Oh, the moon! You guys, I will have to tell you, look at the moon.
First of all, that's very fake. But if it's going to be really fake, if you're going to be like, "Oh my goodness, guys, look at the moon," to get up in space and then be like, "Oh man, there's nothing out here," because the light from the Earth at this extremely low altitude is kind of blocking out all of the stars. So the only visible object at all is the moon. Come on, we know they're not going to point at anything on Earth and be like, "Oh look, there's Kazakhstan. Oh look, there's Costa Rica," because none of them know where any places on a map are, because it's Katy Perry and gang. So the moon.
That's amazing. Wow, look at the blue line. Oh my gosh. Oh,
Look at the blue line. Yes. Ah. Mmm.
oh my goddess. Wow.
Oh my goddess, she says. Yes, that's something normal people say because it's an all-female crew. Yes, and then Katy Perry held up like a little butterfly. It's just so incredible. Ah. And it was such just a lengthy, horrendously difficult, trying journey that at one amazing point, I was wondering if they were ever going to return at all. After all, we did just have astronauts, including a female astronaut, stranded in space for months because the Biden administration goofed with a Boeing contract. Months. And yet they get down, and what's the first thing that happens? I wish we could kind of put up a Who Wants to Be a Millionaire style poll that ended immediately here. The first thing that happens, oh, that's right, you've got Katy Perry who points to the sky, to the goddess, I guess, and then just plants one on the ground.
Katie!
She kisses the ground like she did something incredible. Hun, you were gone for 30 minutes. It reminds me of taking the kids to go somewhere and they're like, I'm so glad to be home. And it's like, dude, we went to Meijer. What are you talking about? Was that Jeff Bezos in there? I saw a rich bald guy, so I'm assuming. Jeff Bezos just like walking away awkwardly, like, oh gosh, this may have been a bit of a mistake. Well, you know, when it comes to big mistakes, then they did an interview with Katy Perry. Because again, it went up a half an hour in an automated car ride to space, which again is cool. Space tourism is neat. I think it's a cool thing. I have flown a plane and then angled the plane's departure down sharply to get some zero gravity for a few seconds. It's pretty cool. But, you know, they got to give Katy Perry an interview. And I'm amazed at her description of this short jaunt in the lowest possible, it's not even in orbit, the lowest possible, technically still space.
It is the highest high, and it is surrender to the unknown, trust, and this whole journey is not just about going to space. It's the training. It's the training, the team. It's
the train. She read a book on string theory. That's what she. Seriously, I'm not kidding. That's her entire training. She like did a little book, like a little coloring book on string theory.
It's the whole thing. I couldn't recommend this experience more. This is like up there with all the, you know, different
all the what
tools that I've learned in my life, from meditation to the Hoffman process. This is up there because what you're doing is you're like really finding the love for yourself, because you got to trust in yourself on this journey.
Ah, yes, the Disney. Like, I just got to trust in myself and worship myself. And I got up there and I was like, wow, there's so much me out here. And I started like licking my own elbows, and that really made the crew uncomfortable. So we had to come back down. And by the way, what this reminds me of is there's an old meme that I do enjoy. Allison, I don't know if do you remember in 2007, there was Miss South Carolina, and they asked her a question about like the world situation, about Americans owning maps. Do you remember like a Miss South Carolina contestant just giving a complete bombed out awful answer?
Yes, it was so painful.
Well, I've got it here for you, Al. Here we go. Roll it.
Okay. Recent polls have shown a fifth of Americans can't locate the U.S. on a world map. Why do you think this is?
I personally believe that U.S. Americans are unable to do so because some people out there in our nation don't have maps, and I believe that our education, like such as in South Africa and the Iraq, everywhere like such as, and I believe
that's Katy Perry. I mean, that's not actually Katy Perry, but that's essentially Katy Perry. I did like the line to the kind of did the show on air chat that you wonder if they all got like an on-ride group pick like they do with the log rides at Disney World.
That would just be it. That would be it.
Jeff Bezos sent up like a second rocket that just has the smiley face and the flashing camera as you go by.
They're all screaming, pointing at the moon.
Oh, it's fantastic. All right, well, radio crew, we'll catch you guys in just a second. We got to send you to the commercial break. We'll be back in a minute. It's the Tony Kinnett cast here on the ground on 93 WIBC. Okie dokes, folks. This is who we do have a new poll from producer Daniel in the chat. Whose speech made more sense, Katy Perry or former President Joe Biden? I got to be honest, man, it's up in the air. And I mean, just above the Carmen line up in the air for 6 minutes. And then, it came right back down. I got to tell you, I think that I could understand Joe Biden's story a little more. I got to give this one to Katy Perry. So, yeah, most speech that made the most sense, I think Biden's did, because he was telling us he'd never seen questionable term for black people when he was in Scranton, and Katy Perry was really getting in touch with herself. Amazing. I did get a chance to talk about this with Chrissy Clark on her show earlier today, which is that, have you all noticed that Katy Perry she's kind of lost it just a touch? Like just a smidge. Let me see if I can get this picture on screen. She looks kind of like, I don't know, like Cher a bit. Like you can kind of see, and again, people age. That's totally fine. Of course people age. That's just the way life is. Now, you don't need me to tell you that. But the weird like makeup, dark shadow lines that they kind of put on her, because you can't have like too much like stage makeup, because if she pressed her head against the window in space, it'd smear and ruin the experience for everyone real quick. But she doesn't look like Katy Perry anymore. I kind of like, I don't know, Cher after 3 tours too many, which was Cher after 3 tours. So I don't know, man. I'm telling you, maybe the child sacrifices are just not doing it anymore. They've seemed to have lost a little bit of their potency. Maybe after Joe Biden broke the limit for the amount of youth absorbed from a child, there was like a, you had to amp it up, and Hollywood just hasn't adapted yet. So that's fair. I'd also want to point out that Wendy's, the fast food restaurant Wendy's, who's known for having fairly unhinged social media posts, has gone after Katy Perry with a passion. So Pop Crave, which I can only assume is like Entertainment Tonight, but for Generation Z, posted about Katy Perry's amazing all-female space taxi ride. And Wendy said, can we please send her back? As well as I kissed the ground and I liked it. Very good. However, they really don't like it, apparently, when you call it a space ride, we've discovered.
What do you think when people say, oh, it's frivolous? Number one, they call it a ride, which I find very irritating because they never say men went for a ride. What do you say to
Yeah, because men drove the ship.
People who think that this was frivolous or just a ride? I think the message that it sends is very, very powerful. And the people that say that, by the way, weren't there.
Yeah, I wasn't there. Yeah, you know why we weren't there? Because they were busy driving it on the ground. You had to go through all of this training to float around? Ooh. I saw a bunch of old ladies doing that in sync at my local swimming pool. We'll be back in a second for a little bit of quick news reaction. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
You're listening to the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
All right, time for a little quick news reaction here. I saw the Home Alone 2 director. So during every year during the Biden years, we were told that the Home Alone 2 sequence, I guess, this would be when when President Trump, again in Home Alone 2, like very, very, very briefly, like just for a millisecond, appeared in the movie to give Kevin McAllister directions. Here it is.
Excuse me, where's the lobby?
Down the hall and to the left.
Thanks.
So yeah, it's a cameo, right? By the way, his cameo in the remake of The Little Rascals, where he is the villain child's father and says he's the best son money could buy, that's fantastic. That by the way is an excellent cameo for Trump. I like it when they give the actors like a cameo that actually kind of fits. Like how I believe that Bruce Willis' best movie is Ocean's 12. Not important to this conversation though. But the director now says that he wants Donald Trump's cameo removed. So like during the Biden years, we were told every Christmas time that Disney Plus was going to cut out the Donald Trump cameo. And they never did because it doesn't matter. Like who cares? I mean, look, I still will argue that one of the like some of the greatest songs are in fact sung by dudes who have done some pretty disgusting stuff. If you're going to take people that you don't like and cut out all of their art, things are going to get pretty empty pretty quickly. But I mean, the political side of this, to come out now during Trump's second term and be like, I'd cut it. But then he says, quote, if I cut it, I'd probably be sent out of the country, end quote. Okay, buddy. Thank you very much. That's real special, bud. So always can count on just the best timing of all when it comes to these liberal directors and things. Then also a little bit of reparations. So a couple other clips that have been sent in also in the news today. Things that you really like to hear on tax day.
They owe each of us $300K. So I don't care how they get the money. That's not my problem. I just want my money. A debt is owed. You owe a debt. You have to pay it.
So a black lady in her car saying, "Give me my money." And the whiny tone while you do it is also a little weird. Be very careful. Be very, very careful telling someone that you have a debt, repay it. Because, I would just take a wager. I'm just going to throw it out there that the majority of people that say you have a debt, repay it, are very likely to have student loans or car payments or house payments or various other kinds of debt that has become a staple of American society, much less I am this color, give me things. For that kind of treatment, you need to enroll at Harvard University. Moving on, we've got a very special event that I was quite fond of. Producer Nick sent me an event from Chelsea, Michigan, in which 2 lines of people completed an amazing task. The Associated Press dispatched reporters to write this story, where a line of people moved one bookstore, book by book by book, to a new location. Saying, wow, I bet that was really far. It was 1 block. AP, the Associated Press, did a full story on it. The video is great. And the reason the video is fantastic is because these people are really hyped at doing something that in this case is like the longest possible way to move books from one location to the other, is to do the fireman bucket carry from old cartoons. Here you go. Passing it. Oh, now we're talking. The things that suburban people get excited about, man. This for me, again, is in Indiana. This is something I would expect to come out of Carmel. And I know that a lot of our listenership does come from Hamilton County, Indiana, whom I do love y'all, but your suburban way of life confuses and befuddles me. That it's like, what'd you guys do this weekend? We stood outside a bookstore for 3 hours, just passing books one to the other. Wow, did you buy any of the books? No. But I saw Amelia Bedelia go on by, and then Martha Stewart's latest home living tips, and also that 50 Shades of Grey. I passed that right along because I got that one at home. Who cares? I can't imagine if I sent a story like that to my editors. I really can't. So that brings us over to what may be my favorite story, my favorite clip that I've been sent in a while. If you followed the show at all, first of all, if you're first time watching, welcome. We're really glad to have you here. If you're first time listening on the radio network or the podcast side, welcome. But there is a particular moment that I believe is when a new lady in the Democrat Party is ready to run for office. And this is when she develops a brand new accent. So this is a long time, tried and true tradition in the DNC. You had Hillary Clinton, who had just a touch of an Arkansas drawl, just a hint of one. And then she changed it up. You had Kamala Harris, and she changed her accent depending on the crowd she was talking to. And got Jasmine Crockett doing the same thing. And now, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to introduce to you the newest accent of greatest, amazing, brilliant Ocasio-Cortez.
Donald Trump is a criminal who was found guilty of 34 felony counts of fraud, liable for sexual abuse. Of course he's lying and abusing and manipulating the stock market too. When he talks about rapists and criminals, he should look in the mirror.
I'm sorry. I can't help but immediately
I'm just chilling in Cedar Rapids.
Come on. It's the same accent every time. Ha-da, ba-da-da-da, da-da, da-da. What is it? We're called that the Hillary Clinton jowl wobble, where you drop your jaw and you just go all the way up. Fantastic. I'm truly a fan of this. I love the idea of AOC running for president because in the last couple of years, people assume that she's gotten smarter, that she's like learned how the government works and how everything works. I will remind you, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez thought for a very long time there were two branches of government. She is one of the dumbest members of Congress, and they think that just because a couple of years have gone by, they ran Kamala Harris, and because Kamala could kind of be shuffled away and shuttled away and you kind of get away with it, you can't do that with AOC. She loves the attention. She loves getting out in front of the crowd. All right, I cannot wait. It's going to be so fantastic. The comments are asking what accent that is. I'm going to call that New York, but the kind of New York who lives in Newark and says they're from New York. That's what accent that is. Also known as give me money. The give me money accent passed on by the great Hillary Clinton. So we've had Hillary Clinton. Then we had Hillary Clinton 2.0 with Kamala Harris. We got Hillary Clinton 3.0, guys. It's AOC. Let's go. Going to be fantastic. We'll be back with some more tomorrow. Thank you very much for tuning in. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Take care.